Think about the last time you had watched a movie in 3D. Maybe it was Avatar. Maybe it was a superhero flick where a piece of concrete looked like it flew directly at your nose. You paid an extra $4, sat in a dark room wearing slightly sticky plastic glasses, and probably thought to yourself, wow, technology is getting so advanced. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the core technology behind that 3D movie is older than the airplane, older than the telephone, and older than the light bulb. Welcome to the show. Today we're stepping out of the flatlands of 2D history and diving into the third dimension. Because the history of 3D media isn't a story of steady technological progress, it's a wild, repetitive cycle of media executives panicking, audiences getting headaches, and a technology that refuses to die. We're tracking 3D from Victorian parlor tricks and comic books to Hollywood gold rushes and VR headsets. Pop on your cardboard glasses, let's look at the history. To find the birth of 3D, we have to travel all the way back to 1838. A British scientist named Sir Charles Wheatonson figured out something fundamental about human biology: stereopieces. Because our eyes are about 2.5 inches apart, each eye sees the world from slightly different angle. Our brains take those two flat images, fuse them together, and calculate depth. Wheatonson realized that if you took two slightly different drawings and viewed them through a series of mirrors, you could trick the brain into seeing 3D. By the late 1800s, this evolved into stereoscope. These handheld viewers became an absolute obsession. If you were a well-to-do Victorian, you didn't scroll Instagram, you sat in your parlor, slid a double-printed photograph card into a wooden viewer, and stared at a 3D image of the Egyptian pyramids or Niagara Falls. It was the world's first true visual mass medium. But print media wanted to drop that bulky wooden viewers. Enter the 1890s and the invention of anaglyph images. You know exactly what this is, even if you don't know the word anaglyph. Anaglyph is the process of printing one image in red ink and a slightly offset image in cyan or blue ink. When you put on those classic paper glasses with the red and blue lenses, the red lens blocks the red image, the blue lens blocks the blue image, and boom, your brain fuses them into a single three-dimensional image. By the 1920s and 30s, this exploded into print. Comic books used it to make monsters leap off the page. Even educational textbooks use anaglyph layers to show medical students the human body and skeleton or complex geometry in 3D. But print was just the testing ground. The real madness started when the images began to move. Let's skip ahead to 1952. Hollywood was facing a massive existential crisis. A terrifying new monster had entered the American living rooms: the television. People were staying at home to watch TV for free instead of buying movie tickets. Sound familiar? Theater owners panicked. They needed something the glowing box at home couldn't provide. They needed a gimmick. By late 1952, an independent film called Bwana Devil hit theaters. It was the first feature-length color 3D movie. The tagline: a lion in your lap, a lover in your arms. It was an absolute sensation and kicked off the golden age of 3D cinema. Between 1952 and 1954, Hollywood pumped out over 50 major 3D releases. We're talking horror classics like The House of Wax and Creature from the Black Lagoon, and even high art like Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder. Contrary to popular belief, these 1950s movies didn't usually use the cheap red and blue paper glasses. They used polarized light technology, which allowed for full, rich color. But there was a catch. To make it work, theaters had to run two separate projectors at the same exact time, perfectly synchronized down to the individual frame. If one projector drifted even slightly out of sync, the audiences got hit with instant eye strain, nausea, and massive headaches. By 1955, the fad was dead. Audiences grew tired of the headaches and the lazy storytelling that relied on actors throwing things at the camera. Hollywood moved on to widescreen formats like CinemaScope, and 3D was packed away in the attic. Act 3, the 80s, the 90s, and the Avatar boom. But 3D never stays buried for long. In the 1980s, it crawled back into theaters with the horror sequels like Friday the 13th Part 3D and Jaws 3D. But it was still plagued by the same issues, ghosts and images and bad headaches. Then came the 1990s. 3D found a safe haven in theme parks and IMAX museums. If you went to Disney World, you saw Honey, I Shrunk the Audience or Michael Jackson's Captain EO. These worked because the theaters were custom built, high-tech environments where the jewel projectors could never fall out of sync. But the biggest, loudest resurrection happened in December of 2009. James Cameron released Avatar. Cameron didn't just use 3D as a gimmick to poke the audience in the eye. He used a newly developed digital camera system to create depth of field, making the alien world of Pandora feel like an extended infinitely beyond the screen. Digital projection completely solved the synchronization issues of the 1950s. Avatar became the highest grossing film of all time, making $3 billion. Sadly, every studio in Hollywood demanded 3D, but instead of filming movies with expensive 3D cameras, they did post-conversion, taking regular 2D movies and using software to chop them into artificial 3D layers. If you remember watching Clash of the Titans in 3D back in 2010, you know how dark, muddy, and cheap it looked. At the same exact time, tech companies tried to bring 3D into the living rooms. Between 2010 and 2013, electronics companies threw billions into marketing. 3D TVs. Nintendo even launched the Nintendo 3DS, a handheld gaming console that promised 3D without the glasses. But guess what? History repeated itself. Audiences didn't want to wear heavy battery-powered glasses on their couch just to watch the evening news. By 2017, major manufacturers officially stopped making 3D TVs. The wave crashed once again. Conclusion: the next dimension. So where does that leave us today? 3D hasn't disappeared, it's just migrated. It left the movie theater screen and strapped itself directly onto our faces. The current generation of virtual reality and extended reality headsets, like the Meta Quest or the Apple Vision Pro, are the direct descendants of Sir Charles Wheatonson's 1838 stereoscope. They use the same exact biological trick, projecting two separate offset perspectives to simulate a world with real depth. For nearly 2 centuries, creators have been trying to shatter the flat prisons of screens and pages. Every few decades, the technology changes, but the human desire remains identical. We want to step inside the stories we love. The next time a new 3D trend emerges and everyone hypes it up as the absolute future of technology, just smile, think of those Victorian parlors, and remember, we've been looking at the world this way for a very long time. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this trip through the third dimension, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep your eyes wide open.